Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Mizoguchi's Ugetsu Monogatari, also known as Ugetsu. Here we are with this wonderful Criterion here. Now this is a film, big event here tonight, of course. I also watched The Seventh Seal today, so you could say I've had a pretty good, a pretty interesting day. Both films are, very hyped for, of course, for some time. Especially this film. This film is the one that I've been looking forward to for at least 4 years. Massively. Of course, I picked this up. It was available, eventually, finally, for the UK, and I could have, of course, got the other versions. It's quite rare. And yes, it's been re-released basically, Blu-ray Criterion here. Really wonderful cover here, and it's just, of course, Criterions are always, an event in themselves. And yes, Mizoguchi is a director who, is acclaimed as one of the best. Up to this point, I didn't think that. I think Ozu certainly, for me, the greatest Japanese director of all time. Because this guy is compared to Ozu, Kurosawa, Kobayashi, and Naruse, and directors like that, of course. And yes, I'd seen roughly five Mizoguchis before this tonight. And yes, I think The Story of the Last Chrysanthemums is the one that I did love. It's the only one I loved, of course. I saw a couple of other ones, some that I've reviewed. Also saw The Life of Haru, which is another 50s work. And yes, this film is another 50s work, known to be his best decade, and of course, many say he fully kind of perfected his style, kind of one scene, one take, mostly. But yeah, you've basically got these wonderful kind of tracking shots, the free-flowing camera, it looks wonderful. Once again, the visuals in this film are great, but they're a step up, from most of his work. This has absolutely wonderful visuals, and I think, yes, it's acclaimed one of the best films of all time, and certainly, kind of many polls, critic polls, have this film, very high, of course. So it's basically 16th century Japan, and of course, Genjuro, basically is this peasant, of course, and kind of Toby as well. He's another peasant, who's kind of, they're together in the film. They have their wives as well, of course, and yes, one played by Kinuyo Tanaka, Miyagi she is in the film, and basically, yes, the first sort of 20 minutes or so, it's, the two kind of groups, the family, of course, Genjuro and of course Miyagi have a kid, basically. It's wartime, so there's a kind of this family scenes at first, and then you see, of course, the soldiers come into play, into the works and kind of trying to destroy the villages, pillage, kind of. Yes, there's some really dark stuff here, but I think straight away, I was definitely invested, more than a lot of the Mizoguchi works, that I'd seen. I will say not as much as Story of the Last Chrysanthemums, that one had me, hooked from the beginning, thoroughly invested, of course, and just all the way through to the end. I think that that was a great film. Can't wait to rewatch that. And yes, review that one. But this one definitely had me hooked. I was definitely finding a lot of humanity in this. The visuals, of course, blew me away, and just the kind of definitely a charm to it. It had more so than a lot of the Mizoguchi films. I found a lot of the time, to watching this one, this. The first sort of half an hour I was finding it a lot more basically kind of warmth, and just kind of grounded feel to the film. A lot of the ones I've not found that interesting and a bit flat emotionally, and characters didn't really engage me all that much. This one, this first half an hour really just I was definitely call this a very good film, at least, with some wonderful visuals. But yes, I think it's claimed as one of the very best films ever made, and I like the film. I like the film. In the end, it's a good film, but for me, I don't think it's one of the best films ever made, and I think it does go downhill. For me, it does. It's just my opinion, of course. Counts for nothing. I just think when the actual main stuff comes into play, of course, this lady, I can't remember her name, but she's basically of course. It's known as a ghost story, and she, of course, she is this woman who kind of he falls for, our protagonist Genjuro, and he becomes kind of obsessed, with this woman, this lady, and of course his main desires in the film, and it's a really good character development at first. is someone who wants to kind of acquire a lot of wealth, and of course, through this character, through this kind of this character that he meets, he kind of he pursues that, and of course, the families kind of get separated. The two couples, of course, and of course the kid as well. They get separated after the half an hour mark, really, and then of course he gets kind of drawn in, to this other place, and this woman, of course, and she of course she is the ghost of the film, and of course. Yeah, it all kind of, the rest of the film is what it's kind of advertised as, and of course, the images that I had kind of seen, mainly of the film, is the stuff that is after the 40-minute mark, really, when they're kind of him and this ghost, this kind of woman is, they're together basically, and you've got all this stuff. Unfortunately, that's when it goes downhill. I just did not connect with this romance, just this relationship, and actually the rest of the film is completely different tone in my opinion, of course. And Toby is as well. He doesn't really show up too much for the rest of the film. He shows up here and there, and it's just I found it a bit messy as well. The way it kept going back and forth, because it had me. It was very long stretches of the film was just this kind of this relationship that was brought in, and it wasn't a relationship I connected to. It wasn't that enjoyable, and then of course I kind of forgot at times about the rest of the characters. Maybe not the Miyagi and the kid. I was always kind of thinking, are they going to come back into the film? But some of the other characters that you see at the beginning, they're brought in kind of here and there, kind of weird places to bring them back in the narrative, and it didn't. I was quite disappointed at times where it was going, and I'll be honest, I did find it pretentious. This whole kind of romance, this ghost love story. I think very unique approach, and I appreciate what Mizoguchi was trying to do. Once again, it's kind of always interesting what he does. The themes he explores. It's very different though to the ones I've seen. Of course, it's a wartime film, and you could say it's an epic in many ways, and just I think yes, the cinematography is better than pretty much all the other works, but for me, most of the other things overall, as a film judged on its own, over the course of the film, the whole narrative, for me, is one of his worst. I don't think this is a great film personally, but I liked it. I certainly really liked. At times, I was really into the first sort of 40 minutes. Certainly the first half an hour, I was finding there was some humour in there. It was just really compelling kind of drama. Their struggles. For me, it was just really real. I think the emotions, the characters, the kind of struggles, and just the overall, the way the communities and stuff were portrayed. It just felt like something I was actually connecting to. And then when it went more, and I love fantasy, but in this film I didn't think it kind of worked as well as it should have done. It started going off, and I didn't connect to it a lot of the time. I think it was just something that I did find pretentious. I didn't think was that well. There was not really any character development for the rest of the film, other than this kind of, you could say, kind of one note obsession, kind of struggle with our main protagonist, and of course this ghost lady, and I think there was even a couple of dream sequences, kind of dreamy sequences, in the film where it was in different places with the lady, the ghost, and it came across really weird and kind of pretentious, and I didn't connect to it. So this film is definitely a mixed reaction from me. I did like the film because of course the direction at times was still stunning, the cinematography of course throughout, although it does become a bit more kind of flat towards the end of the film, and stuff, and but most of the film, the cinematography is definitely wonderful. The lighting, the wonderful tracking shots. This film, the way it's shot, it's absolutely stunning. I think the editing at times, I love the kind of the editing in this film. It's really nice. Gives it a wonderful feel. But I just think the narrative, is a split one. I think the first half, less so than that, but roughly the first half is something that I really liked. I think was really well built up, and of course, just got invested in their struggles and their individual kind of motives. Maybe it wasn't always a great film in this first half. It did have some moments that were flat still, and of course, yeah, just at times nothing special, truly special in terms of the characters and the overall the script, stuff like this. But really, I think it does lose its way, but I can't give it less than a good score because that first half I really really liked. At times it was great, and of course throughout the cinematography and just the overall, there is an atmosphere there that while I don't really think it really really hooks me after that. I think that the atmosphere for what he was going for, Mizoguchi, is definitely effective. It's kind of like a horror film at times, deeply disturbing at times. But because it was quite heavy-handed for me personally, I just couldn't truly commit to the rest of the film. In that sense, I was definitely, I wasn't in the film a lot of the time. After this, I was getting quite bored because I didn't like the character, the ghost lady in the film. I didn't like some of the side characters involved there. I never really got invested in a single dialogue scene after that 40-minute mark. It was just a real shame because I was definitely invested, emotionally. It was very human at first, and I just didn't like the way it went. But yeah, it's just this simple, simply I didn't like the way the story went, and I think it was, handled in a way that just didn't, I didn't really agree with. But I think definitely a very unique film. I've never really seen a film like this, but. If someone asked me an honest answer question, do you think this is a great film? No, I don't, and that's my opinion. I actually watched, of course, The Seventh Seal today, which I was thinking, this film would be better than The Seventh Seal. No, personally, I think actually The Seventh Seal is a much better film. And I think, this is one of the most acclaimed Mizoguchi films. I have to, of course, check out a lot of the other ones, especially Sancho the Bailiff. That's the one. If I don't like that one too much, for me, Mizoguchi is not, a director who really I don't think is a great director overall, and that's my personal opinion. I think I love Kurosawa, apart from a film like Stray Dog so far. I absolutely adore Ozu's work. I think he was one of the greatest geniuses. He's in my top 10 directors. Miyazaki, a master. And of course, Kobayashi. Really, really liked Harakiri, but Mizoguchi, I think definitely I don't connect to the way I should. A lot of time, a lot of his films, this one included, and it's a very different style. It wasn't, as static and kind of at times as lifeless as a film like Sister of the Gion with the style, but it was just more. Even then, the visuals didn't really elevate the film. When the narrative definitely was a very, very split, kind of feel. It didn't really invest me, as I say, after the 40-minute mark. I was bored. I was quite annoyed at times, just frustrated with where it's going, and just it was quite depressing actually. The way it ends, with the kind of, Toby, the one who wants to, of course, his aspiration is to be a samurai, and it was just a bit really depressing actually. It didn't have much hope at all. The way it ended with him, and things kind of culminate at the end, to have an effect. But actually, this could be one of the worst Mizoguchi endings. And I said in one of my last Mizoguchi reviews, his endings always come together, but the journey sometimes is a bit of a struggle at times. There's lulls here and there in the narrative; they're flat. This one actually, the ending I wasn't really at all moved by. This film started off a lot better for me than it came, in the end. And of course, it's meant to be an epic film, and you're meant to, go on this journey. I think actually, it was definitely, a compelling journey up until, kind of, the main sort of romance started to develop, and it just, I don't think it was a well-developed romance or just relationship at all. And of course, it's got many messages in the film about greed, loyalty, and kind of chasing your dreams and stuff like this. Many different themes. Of course, set in this backdrop of the war, one of the wars. Of course, there is struggles, but I just think it could have. This film, really just went off the rails. Personally, for me, there's many films. I don't agree. That they're some of the best ones ever made. And of course, there are ones that I think are underrated, that are some of the very best films ever made. Ozu as well, he's made at least 10 films, that are some of my absolute favourite films, my favourite films list. He's made countless masterpieces. Kurosawa's made quite a few. But for me, Mizoguchi, the only one that I really loved was The Story of the Last Chrysanthemums. I'll try and review that, of course, quite soon. That'll be a rewatch, of course. But this film, of course, I was really, really hyped. And of course, I don't let the hype get in the way all the time. This is just, literally as a film on its own. It was disappointing. And in terms of his work, this is meant to be the best or second best. Sancho, it's kind of battling out there. You see a lot of the time between the two. Maybe even Life through Haru is sometimes up there. But for me, for this to be called the best, I think, and me, I think this is very close to being my least favourite Mizoguchi. I would have to give it a little bit more though than The Sister of the Gion, because the cinematography was leagues above it. I think probably this one has lower lows for my investment and just the overall. It was the first one that was actually kind of pretentious for me that I've seen, Mizoguchi, but I'd have to give it a 73% because I was really, really invested. I could have called it a great film, maybe, until the 30-minute mark, but had some flaws and it wasn't, anything truly, a special masterpiece or anything. But it was possibly a great film with some absolutely wonderful cinematography and some really emotional stuff, and it had, quite a lot of light-hearted moments in a way, and just uplifting moments about family, one of the themes. But it really went off the rails, I think I found it quite pretentious, very, very, forced kind of depressing feel that it had towards the end. Didn't like the way the narrative went too much. There was some good moments after, of course, the 40-minute mark, but for me overall, I didn't really connect with this film too much. I liked it. It's a good film, but I'll be honest, this is just, from my personal, this is all I do on YouTube is document my thoughts. But for me, to say to myself, I was disappointed with this film is an understatement. I was looking forward to this for years, and you can, people will probably be quite disappointed with the score, if they see this review, because it's an acclaimed film, it's a loved film. But for me, I am more disappointed than you are, because this is a film I personally wanted to love, and for me, it was a real disappointment. I think this is an honest review, and it's just my thoughts. It's a good film. It's not a bad film. It has some kind of weak moments. Overall, not a bad film, but really, really disappointing. Because even not just putting it against one of the best films ever made kind of status, and be disappointed, overhyped or whatever. It's just the fact that among even Mizoguchi's work, or just most of the Japanese films that I've seen, it's just definitely one of the weaker ones. The rating I've given it is probably more than my enjoyment, probably in this 60% kind of thing for my enjoyment. But yes, this is, I would recommend it, of course, because most people love the film. But I've seen so many great Japanese films, and for me, this is definitely not one of them. I think it's a disappointing film that, in the end, is pretentious. It's quite flat a lot of the time. The narrative I didn't think was very sincere after that 40-minute mark, and it was kind of false. And I think the cinematography, of course, is a thing that really, really and then the overall editing and some of the acting, especially Kinuyo Tanaka. I was so disappointed that she wasn't in it more. She was great in the film. The acting, of course, from a main protagonist as well. Performances really, really good as well. So. In terms of just some of these things like cinematography, the actual overall, the acting and stuff like this, it does keep it, from being a kind of lower score, in the second half of the film. But for me, overall, as a piece, this is disappointing, and I think it is a good film, but it's certainly not a great one. And yes, just my opinion. I'm not, hating on the film at all. It's just. What a shame, real shame, because I was really, really looking forward to this one, and just another Mizoguchi. I think it's fine, it's a good film overall, but as an overall piece of cinema, definitely for me not a great one. Although cinematography, 2 thumbs up there. But yes, Of course, more Mizoguchis over time I will watch, but you know, this is a real disappointment. And yes, but don't think this is a hating, you know, on review. I do kind of like the film, you know, but I think definitely a disappointment. So yes, thanks for watching my review.